So now you've got the connection that I was trying to make last week with the unholy alliance, right? It's all being tied together. Nothing Russia can do. They're with Iran tied to the hip in the same way the Obama screwed up and didn't tie us to the hip to keep these guys out of there, right? Incoherent. Russia is now a player in the Middle East. While it's not as influential as it suggests, its interest in the region cannot be ignored. Moreover, it will continue to exploit U.S. mistakes to expand its influence and possibly flip or at least Finlandize long-standing American allies like Egypt and possibly even Turkey.
The war with Iran. This is part 2 of Mideast 2017.
Whoa, can it do that? Does Kissinger know that? Right? Is Brzezinski, hey, were they advising Obama that if we were incoherent and indecisive with our policy, Russia might be able to come in and flip or Finlandize Egypt and even Turkey? Are we aware of that, or are we just reacting now to what Russia's opportunities have become thanks to our previous reactions, which turned out to be incoherent? I mean, can anyone believe this narrative? So, I don't know, we're being spoon-fed their way of us seeing this. And I say this is very intricate for a reason, because they're giving us a lot of the details if you can read between the lines. The best way, he goes on to say, to counter Russian influence in the Mideast is to have a clear and consistent U.S. policy that makes our continued support of our allies there unequivocal. Right? We need to get behind somebody, which is going to be this new Sunni coalition, I imagine. Russia will succeed in stabilizing the Assad regime, and it can engage to a limited extent with Saudi Arabia and its allies to try to stabilize and raise oil prices. Beyond that, a skillful American policy will likely preempt any future expansion of Russian influence. So I guess Assad had to be out a year and a half, right? We had to kill all these people. We had to get all of this, all these refugees, all of this absolute mayhem, chaos, destruction that's resulted because Assad had to go. Go back and listen to how he had to go, and we are the United States of America, and damn it, Assad had to go. And this guy's telling me Russia, they're not as strong as they seem. They've got limited influence. Well, how come then why are they able to influence Assad staying if we said Assad had to go? Okay, so anyway, Russia will succeed, he says, in stabilizing the Assad regime. So think about this, guys. He had to go, but you watch, we're going to be dealing with an Assad that's staying for now. Although I think somebody's going to kill Assad at some point. That's going to be the third horn that's uprooted to make way for this new caliph that's forming. And if not for him, for the new system that's going to include, Turkey taking part of the land or whatever. But at the moment, we're making it look like Assad's back in. I mean, he's going to be part of the negotiating, right? Who did the people want? A year ago, America said he had to go. Turkey said, there's no dealing with him. Saudi Arabia said, we're sending the guns. Remember 6 months ago or so? The coalition of, was it Turkey and Saudi Arabia? They had how many tens of thousands of people ready to march over there and get rid of Assad? So I don't know. Now Russia will succeed in stabilizing the Assad regime, and it can engage to a limited extent with Saudi Arabia and its allies to try to stabilize and raise oil prices. Well, Saudi Arabia's allies are the U.S., so I don't know how it's going to do that. Beyond that, a skillful American policy will likely preempt any future expansion of Russian influence. The Kremlin can leverage Tehran's power and influence for its own ends, like supporting Assad in Syria, but long-term, a powerful Iran is not in Russian strategic interest. On at least this point, there is possible common ground between Washington and Moscow. So this sets us up for the peace that's coming before the war, in which they don't have a choice but to support each other, or to fight each other. We'll have to watch and see how that develops in the end, whether it's all-out war of, multilateral war or not. But at the moment, they're suggesting that there's common ground with America in that a strong Iran is not necessarily in the best interest of Russia. They don't tell us why, and I don't necessarily agree with that. It's Turkey and Russia that have a long-standing, common interest or opposition in a common interest, which is Constantinople. Russia was promised that in World War I. That's why they were in it, to defeat the Ottoman Empire. So there's some history there in which I would expect, Turkey and Russia to be enemies in the end. Turkey, this article goes on to say, a long-standing American ally, has under its president Erdogan increasingly behaved as a rogue actor in the region. Erdogan is attempting to build a broad Sunni coalition to counter Iran, but is couching it in the context of a restoration of Turkish influence in the lands of the former Ottoman Empire. Moreover, he is defining that coalition in Islamist and anti-Western terms. Erdogan's assertion that Turkey has a, quote, responsibility to its brothers in the former Ottoman Empire, unquote, is popular among his constituents, but has gotten little traction among Arabs in the region. Right? He's trying to start the Ottoman Empire, but only his coalition's into that. Moreover, Ankara's willingness to support radical jihadist groups, including, for a brief time, the Islamic State, and turning a blind eye to the role of Turkish companies in facilitating the smuggling and sale of contraband oil and stolen antiquities from Islamic State, puts it at sharp odds with U.S. policy in the region and has led to a sharp deterioration in Ankara's relations with Washington and the European Union. Now, are you telling me that Turkey was facilitating this Islamic State, which has been the scourge of the world, and sanctions went on Iran for pursuing a nuclear program and for funding, Hezbollah and other people? They're fighting Islamic State as far as we know. But Ankara was complicit in the funding of Islamic State, and that wasn't a big deal. I mean, we talk about it, but do you get it? How obviously Islamic State, all their strings are pulled together. Because how is that possible? If Islamic State is as bad as we were told a year ago, the threat that it became, 11 million displaced people, this war, 50,000 bombs, it brings Russia in, it's got the Cold War, instigated again. It's got the world on heightened, violence in every country, everywhere. And Erdogan was complicit in that. Turkey was complicit in that, in allowing these people to sell their contraband oil. So, and that wasn't bigger than the Iran deal at the time, as far as doing something about it immediately. What's got more impact on the world? North Korea threatening to launch a missile, Iran having the capability to make a nuclear weapon, or Islamic State selling oil, funding this scourge that's threatening the entire stability of the world. And yet, instead, listen to what Ankara was able to do. So selling their contraband oil and stolen antiquities from IS puts it at sharp odds with U.S. policy in the region and has led to a sharp deterioration in Ankara's relation with Washington and the European Union. This is particularly true of Erdogan's attempt to use the Syrian refugees to leverage more favorable terms from the EU for Turkey and its citizens. Erdogan's arrest or dismissal of individuals that he claims were supporters of the failed coup now exceeds 110,000 Turkish citizens. He's used the coup attempt to purge the government, courts, and military of any potential opposition and to close media outlets that criticized him. If Erdogan continues along his current track, his actions will amount to a counter-revolution of the Ataturk-led revolution that established the modern secular Turkish state. So think of what's happening in 110,000 people purged. The facilitation of ISIS funding, the counter-revolution, as this guy's calling it, of an Islamic anti-Western. Why is this not being spoken of as something that must be countered and stopped immediately, as in 6 months ago, so that all of this was headline news like the Iran? I'm just saying, if the narrative were true on the surface, wouldn't this be where your strategists would be telling you, hey, watch out, there's a lot bigger problem coming here than from Iran that doesn't have a weapon and simply sends some AK-47s to these guerrilla wars that we have clearly allowed, facilitated the constant perpetuation of that. We could stop that, but we don't. Just like we facilitate the perpetuation of the drug war and the war on drugs. We could stop drugs, but we don't. The Taliban stopped the growing of poppy fields, and all of a sudden the production of heroin dropped 90%. Then we had 9/11 and a war on terrorism, and the American troops went into Afghanistan and reestablished a government there favorable to poppy production, and heroin production at 110% of where it was before. But I'm sure that's all because of evil Afghanistanis. That's got nothing to do with American military-run drug operations, because of course we're in a war on drugs. So come on, people. Black is white and white is black when it comes through this propaganda. That's why I'm taking the time with this article today. I think it's very important. It's just, I've never seen for a while, not never, in quite a while, I haven't seen so much information thrown down in one article that really confirms so many of the things that we've been watching for so long. Because of his 7 original macro points, he's covering like all the Middle East instances right now that we've been expecting geopolitical machinations to come into alignment with our eschatological view. And so I just want to point out, here we go, pointing out that Turkey rogue, right? What have we been saying for a long? These rogue actions. And well, yeah, if you look at it along the narrative of everything else, it looks like Turkey should be one of our biggest enemies in the whole world right now, along with Saudi Arabia. But no, 2 NATO allies. So think about where we're going with all this and why we get the sort of news stories we do and not the sort of, right? And the sort of news stories we don't get. Okay, so let's go on with this. Turkey has 2 significant vulnerabilities, however. First, the Turkish economy is dependent on access to European markets and capital. Secondly, its flirtations with Moscow notwithstanding, long-term Russian and Turkish interests are divergent. Russia is still the principal security threat to Turkey, and despite the Turkish military, Ankara will need allies if it finds itself confronting Russia. Erdogan's foreign policy is largely failing, and is doing so at a time when Turkey's economic weakness makes it dangerous to alienate the EU or the United States. So see, Turkey's stuck between a rock and a hard place. That's why I think he's seeking this Sunni coalition. He'd like to be the guy to lead this conquering and to conquer on behalf of the new Sunni caliphate, which I believe people like him must know is coming, and he's making his play. But yes, with Russia, at Constantinople, that's what Russia needs for their long-term geopolitical security. So either they have a rock-solid alliance with Turkey, which is not unhistorical, or they, eventually have to be looked at as at odds with Turkey. They're the biggest threat, as this says, to Turkey. So Turkey can't withstand a threat from Russia except through a NATO alliance. And as it says, the Turkish economy is dependent on on exporting to the West. So they need that. They need to keep being a player for NATO, which is why I say you can see that they are a player for NATO, and I believe why, in the bigger picture, Turkey's being played against the Hashemite king, so that they can war in the end. That, just like Rothschild's funding Germany to let's go, or the Prussians, I should say, in World War I. Let's go get that Franz Ferdinand. Let's get this war going. And also funding the Russians on the other side. And eventually bringing America into the war with England. Money flowing to all sides to accomplish something. I don't think that method has changed. It's just got a vision that we don't really, unless you have an undermined view through eschatology, the geopolitical narratives that they give us don't provide a sufficient vision. Imagining that this UN and peace talks and stability in the region, all these words they throw around, free markets, all of that is mirrors and smoke for the real story, which is setting up geographies and demographies, sections of people to do what they want, whether it's kill each other or grow their food, whatever that is. That's what's really going on. So unless you have some vision of a grander scheme in which all of this stuff is falling, you follow these narratives, they're not going to make any sense. Everybody's going to be bound by these tenuous military alliances that have been set up so that their strings can be pulled, is how I see it. And so Turkey is in that position. There's nothing they can do but follow the string that they're being pulled by NATO right now, because otherwise, they're going to fall to Russia. And meanwhile, I think they're being told to play this card, this new Ottoman Empire card. That's what seems to be going on there, to set them eventually in a position of being divided out from the rest of the Sunnis, being divided away from Russia, being divided away from everyone perhaps. And in the end, who do they side with? Who do they, or do they just get conquered by the Sunni Caliph that is backed by NATO at that point? That we have to wait and see. But I would say division and chaos and war is what eventually is going to happen for 42 months after this peace. And we're seeing the seeds of that now, is the insight on the geopolitical scene I want to keep bringing to bear on what comes out of the mainstream media. Okay, so the civil wars in Syria and Yemen have become Shia-Sunni proxy wars. All right, that's just what Sheikh Hossein was saying for the last couple of years since they started. Ones in which the success of neither side is in Washington's interest. That's not true. In Yemen, the U.S. is providing intelligence and logistical support to the largely Saudi-led effort, while Iran is supplying the Shia-related Houthis. All that is for Washington's benefit. All that is for string pulling to set these people up, to get weapons into place, to kill certain people that obviously have the strings of power that we don't want in place when the time comes for their opposition to be funded. The U.S. has wisely avoided further entanglements in Yemen. Houthi elements have attacked, no doubt, under Iranian instruction, U.S. warships in the region to either force a U.S. withdrawal or escalated U.S. involvement, either one which would be in Tehran's interest. Yeah, of course, Tehran would like to provoke the U.S. to a military confrontation. What? And the U.S., true to its nature, is used to just being attacked but avoiding entanglement. What? Show me the precedent for either of those two statements. Washington does not want to see a pro-Iranian regime in the southwest corner of the Arabian Peninsula on the flank of the Red Sea, but it has little to gain from an expanded American role there. So, again, all of that is deception and misdirection. Of course, they want to see a pro-Iranian regime, meaning the Houthis. That's why all this is pumped up right now. That's why the strings are being pulled. That's why the U.S.-led Saudi regime attacked the Houthis so that the Houthis could only defend themselves, so that Iran could only send the Houthis provisions for their defense, so that we could stimulate all this right now, because what we want is stimulated hostility in the region. Of course, America doesn't want to have a bigger role there. We already have all the role there. We supply the weapons to Saudi Arabia and the interest there, and we push the buttons and pull the strings of Iran to supply those poor civilians being killed, the Houthis on the other side. So our role can't really be expanded. Back to this ridiculous article, American involvement in the Syrian civil war was initially prompted to contain the expansion of the Islamic State, and then, in a typical example of mission creep, grew into a half-hearted effort to support the Syrian rebels and overthrow the Assad regime. The premise was that the U.S. would arm and train moderate elements within the anti-Assad opposition while supporting their campaign with air power. All of that's a lie, of course. American involvement had nothing to do with containing the expansion of Islamic State. As I say, we've never seen any such proof of any such war. What we've seen is this proxy Sunni-Shia war. What we've seen is Shias driven from their land, is what we've seen. And we've seen Shias on the run, being refugees. And Sunnis, of course, who are going to need to be brought back under some new institutions, which will be Sunni, which is this new coalition we're looking for. But anyway, that it was of course meant to do. There's nothing half-hearted. Mission creep. So this is how the U.S. military operates nowadays: is we get involved in a civil war, which we know is going to be highly unpopular with our citizenry. We know this is very delicate matter. We know that this is a place where we've got a lot of experience since the 50s. We got revolutions we've been involved in. We've got hostage situations we've been involved in. Peace accords we've been involved in. I mean, we know the nature of getting involved in the Middle East, but we make a half-hearted attempt because of mission creep. Does that sound right to anybody? If it is, then boy, oh boy, we sure been wasting a lot of money on this government, haven't we? And all the intelligence gathering that's gone on for 70 years, that's given us these people like Kissinger and Brzezinski to give us this counsel on what to do overseas, how to keep other people in check, so that we maintain our power in the world. Boy, we've really messed that up, haven't we? Over things like half-hearted efforts and mission creep. So I don't buy it. The idea that there were moderate elements within the Syrian opposition, or that these could be identified and organized into a coherent group, proved to be illusory. Darn it, we thought we could do it, but it was an illusion. Likewise, the role of U.S. air power was so constrained by restricted rules of engagement that only a quarter of the missions delivered their payload. That's not what they were. They were bombing the heck out of them. What restrictions on missions of engagement kept us from, what problems did we have with these 10,000 bombs that we dropped? What couldn't we accomplish in blowing up these rows of Toyota trucks carrying Islamic terrorists? What missions of engagement against the people chopping off heads were we, they showed us those pictures through WikiLeaks of that helicopter engaging those poor people, didn't they? That turned out to be a guy with a camera, children in the van. No military engagement whatsoever on an empty street. A bunch of Syrians standing around a van, right? Or were they Iraqis? I don't remember now. And they told them fire, 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 engage, 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 till they killed all those people. What rules of engagement are we talking about here against ISIS? Kept, limited us. Are you kidding me? Notwithstanding a haphazard policy, the U.S. and its allies have succeeded in rolling back the Islamic State in both Syria and Iraq. Well, what an accomplishment. The U.S. and its allies, notwithstanding a haphazard policy, bunch of... We talk about ourselves as if we're the ragtag bunch coming out of the caves, having to fight against all the institutionalized power, but we've managed to roll them back. Good for us. In Syria, the largely Kurdish-led and staffed Syrian Democratic Force has emerged as an American proxy ground force. Supported by U.S. air power and special forces, the SDF has succeeded in expelling IS from large areas of Syria. Turkish opposition to the role of Syrian Kurds in the SDF, and to a separate Syrian Kurdish state, the so-called Rojava, however, has led the U.S. to forego supplying heavy weapons to the SDF and constrain the areas where the SDF operates. This is also... I want us to go through this because this is all really important right now. In Iraq, the U.S. supported Iraqi army units and Peshmerga forces in collaboration with regional Sunni militias, and the Iranian-supported Shia militias have also successfully rolled back the Islamic State and are now converging on Mosul, Islamic State's last major urban center there. I mean, think about that. U.S.-supported Iraqi units, Peshmerga forces, collaboration with regional Sunni militias, and Iranian-sponsored Shia militias. All that in the last 3 years is, how many people has IS had? We were told at one point, 30,000. We do drills with nearly as many people. Why has it been so hard, as I've been saying all along, to roll back these people? Why are we making it like it's just been such a tough fight to roll back these people, if it hasn't just been like the rest of our guerrilla wars over there and our war on drugs and our war on terrorism, something we fund both sides to keep going all along. So now they're telling us we're almost ready now to get them. Last major urban center. The battle for Mosul will be bitterly fought street by street. Mosul is a city roughly the size of Houston, Texas. Its pre-war population was approximately 2 million people. Its current population is unclear and has been estimated anywhere from 400,000 to 1 million inhabitants. The battle for Mosul will be the biggest urban battle since Stalingrad, a city that was only 1/5 the Mosul side. Now, in Stalingrad, you had evidence of the fight. I'm wondering why I can't see one shred of evidence of this street by street. You'd think you'd have drone footage covering the streets. You'd have nightly news showing the map of the city, what part of it had been evacuated because of the war, the people that were on the run, what part of it was still inhabited, what streets are they on, what streets have they taken over. Let me see some drone footage of the battles going on. Where is ISIS running? Show me one piece of footage of a group of ISIS fighters retreating or gaining ground in Mosul. It's only the size of Houston, and it's only got half the people left in it. How many cameras could you station around there and get some verifiable footage of this battle for Mosul and who it is against? So I think it's all just a wag the dog charade. Whoever they're killing over there, as I've been saying a long time, it's to get the wrong people out of the places that have been deemed the wrong places for them. You're not to be here anymore. This is going to be Sunni Caliphate territory. It's no longer yours. If you're not for this new Sunni Caliph that's coming, you have to go. And if you don't want to go, we have to throw you out home by home, street by street. So the reason there's no footage of that is because they don't want evidence of what they're really doing. Just like you don't see much footage of when the Mexican government came in here to the Punta Mita area and threw all the fishermen and people that had been out there for generations on this peninsula, which was a fishing peninsula with just little, what people would call straw huts, grass huts, and simple dwellings, and fishermen with their boats, and had been for generations. And they sold it to investors. Bill Gates is one of them. Big time multinational investment company came in and bought that land from the Mexican government to develop a private 2-golf course, big international playground. And the fishermen said, "What do you mean you sold it? This isn't for sale. We live here. What do you mean sold it? That's against our Constitution. This is our land." The government said, "Sorry, we sold it." They came in the night. They came and they offered people money. "We'll pay you." Then they gave them a little bit of land over in the town where we'll build you a house. We'll give you some land. You have to leave here. So a lot of them took that deal. And many of them said, "You know what? I don't want to move to town. I don't want that house. I want this house. I want to live where this is my place." So, just like in Palestine originally, everywhere, with the Indians, with the Aboriginals, with everybody. The government came in the night and they moved those people out physically. But you don't see much footage of that. And if it had to go on for years, they'd call it a civil war, not a relocation, an illegal relocation, which is what I think must be going on. So anyway, while the United States has made notable progress against the Islamic State, it is losing the war against jihadism. Both Al-Qaeda and Islamic State have successfully expanded their franchise to some 50 countries around the world. Because, of course, it's such a desirable franchise to join. Every Muslim can't wait to be part of it. Every person outside Islam is just so enticed by it that all over the world what you have is this gigantic social media, flocking. There's this stampede now to the Islamic State. That's how great a movement this is. We're losing the war against jihadism because, darn it, jihadism is in. Everyone wants to be a jihadist, and Islamic State is selling, and the franchises are growing like hotcakes. Does anyone believe that? Does anyone know anyone who thinks it's a good idea, who thinks it's a strong argument? I mean, during the rise of communism 100 years ago, and even the Bolshevik Revolution, in America, they had to stomp it out through false flags, right? Blowing stuff up and blaming it on the Bolsheviks so that they could then apply our guns, our weaponry, our police solutions, and go out and root out all the people that were trying to sell the ideal of communism peacefully, that were just trying to gather together and say, hey, communism's just an idea that maybe instead of a few people being able to get their hands on everything and turn everyone else into their slave, maybe everybody should just agree that everything belongs to everybody right off the bat. Okay, that used to be a political platform in the United States, and it had to be demonized. But even while it was being demonized, there was still a whole group of people arguing that it shouldn't be because it's a legitimate platform. But can you really say that about the Islamic State? Is there anybody out there arguing that it's a legitimate platform? You have to keep propagandizing it only through the media that the Islamic State's growing. Islamic State, Islamic State, Islamic State. They're recruiting. People are joining. Where? Where are they? Who's joined? Show me one person. Where? Where is it? Where is it a problem? What community is fighting the fact that everybody wants to be part of the Islamic State? Where? Where is this popular? Show me one place, even in where you're telling me they live. You told me months ago that they were locking people in and threatening their own people not to leave because they were such a scourge that even their own people were trying to get away. So, now this guy's telling me we're losing the war on jihadism. All this, anti-war, everybody being affected by all this senseless killing, and yet that's what jihadism is being shown to be. Not like when they first started the PLO and jihadism was claimed to be a reaction to oppression, that these quote-unquote terrorists were only terrorizing because these people were willing to strap a bomb to their chest because they couldn't take the oppression anymore. And that was what was known as terrorism or jihadism. At least there was some sort of, argument as to why. But now we don't even, this is just killing. These people just want to inflict as much pain on every innocent person as they can. And that's being sold as a war that the world is losing, because a war of ideals, jihadism. Oh yeah, let's join these people. Let's just inflict it. Let's just kill for killing's sake. Get me a truck so I can run people over. Not because I have a point. Not because I'm asking you to look at my point. Not because I'm asking you to pay attention to these starving children over here or any such thing. No, just because killing innocent people is what I'm about. And don't you want to be part of that? So to pretend that that's becoming popular is absolutely an outrage. Now listen to this, you guys. This is so important. And I want to end on this. It's very important. Moreover, back to the article, even stripped of its territorial domain, Islamic State will continue. I don't know how he knows that, but this is what he's saying. Moreover, even stripped of its territorial domain, Islamic State will continue. Its foreign franchises will survive, and in Syria and Iraq, it will simply revert to its earlier role as a jihadist insurgency. The problem with combating jihadism is that it has become a seductive, emotionally charged, powerful idea, and it's impossible to defeat an idea with military force. You can only defeat an idea with a better idea, an effort that Washington has failed to pursue. Right? So I just covered the fact that, what a great idea, this jihad. Let's kill for killing's sake. That is seductive and emotionally charged. You bet. Why not? No, you know what's seductive and emotionally charged? Freedom, free rights. The civil rights movement was a seductive and emotionally charged movement. Even the whole patriotism, like the Tea Party movement, was the hope and change of Obama was a seductive and emotionally charged movement. But become part of this ISIS jihad, who is that seducing? It's only emotionally charged for the most part because it's morbid and makes people hate it. It's hardly emotionally charged as in gathering people to it. So this whole idea to me is pure propaganda to try and convince us that this absurd idea, instead of having never taken traction in the first place if it wasn't for its intense funding and planning, is such a strong idea, this is jihadist insurgency, is that it's just going to spread everywhere. Going back to this article now. We'll finish it here. You cannot separate jihadism from its Islamic roots, even if most Muslims reject the jihadist interpretation of Islam. A better idea also must have Islamic foundations, a concept that the Obama administration has been unwilling to address on the premise that linking jihadists and Islam is inherently racist. Okay, so this is all absurd as well. If you're going to call jihadist interpretation of Islam, if you want to make that connection, then you have to make the warring interpretation of Christianity for Christians. How can you call warring Christian? There is love your enemies, right? Jesus carried no sword, and when Peter pulled the sword out, he said, what am I, leading a rebellion? He told the soldiers, and when James pulls his sword out, or Peter, whoever it was, to chop the centurion's ear off, if that's the way it went down. He said, what are you doing? You know? Don't you know I can call down all the violence I need from heaven? When the devil supposedly told Jesus, why don't you throw yourself off this mountain and the angels will catch you? Right? So, supposedly he had all the power but didn't use it. So that's what's Christian. Loving our enemies would be Christian. Fighting them with the military and pretending that God gave us that right, that's absolutely pure anti-Christian. That's false Christianity. So to connect Islam with jihadists just because the jihadists claim to be Islamic is just like connecting violent, warring, fascist, racist Americans or any other Christians with Christianity because they claim to be Christian. It just is a misinterpretation of their scripture. Either way. So, of course it's racist. Anybody who's a terrorist or a jihadist, because there is such a thing in jihad, which is a war of ideals, but it's one that you show through your actions of standing against oppression, not killing innocent people. Just like in Christianity, there's a war against oppression. It's one you stand for by throwing your body in front, making your death an example, right? Kill me instead of him. You might kill him after you kill me, but you're going to have to kill me first. I throw my body in front of it. Okay, that's a jihad. But to take up arms and kill innocent people, there's no such thing. That's simply terrorism. And it doesn't matter what you call yourself. You're a terrorist. There is no Islamic terrorist, Christian terrorist. No, you're just a terrorist. So they want it connected to Islam. They need it connected to Islam. And the truth is, of course, there is no such thing as an Islamic jihadist. There is, but there's no such thing as an Islamic terrorist. Jihadism is not terrorism. But they need all these issues confused for us because they need Islam to be the great enemy in this end times. And the truth is that the real terrorist is the unseen one who's pulling the strings and making us believe all this stuff. So we'll break this one into two parts, and thanks for being here for the End Times Trending this week. Talk to you soon.